welcome back to Tab Space. So, today I'm about to talk about something that I really don't talk about enough. I touch on mental health, I touch on teen girls' mental health, I've touched on motivation for women, I've touched on just mental health in general. But I got a comment a while ago that despite the fact that it in the moment kind of bothered me, it did remind me, let me not exclude the men. Let me not act like men don't have mental health issues as well, because that right there in itself, that discounting of the fact that men deal with mental health just like we do as females, it's not realized enough in society. You know, I don't know. I'm not in rooms where it's all men, obviously, because I'm not one of them. So I don't know what kind of conversations that they have, but I know that in social circles where it's men and women, it's like we can talk about females' mental health. We can talk about it very publicly. But when it comes to the men, it's kind of like people will laugh at you and ostracize you as a man for going through mental health before they will offer you a helping hand or ask you if you're good. I mean, you got Orlando Brown, for example. You've got Kanye West, for example. Anytime that either of these men go through a mental health crisis of any kind and they do it publicly because they're in the public eye, we just hee hee ha ha, let's repost this clip because he said something funny, he said something goofy, he did this, he did that. But we're not paying the fact that these men are going the fuck through it any mind. And if anybody that knows me personally, that's known me for a minute and knows how I feel about Kanye West, I am very, I'm very pro bipolar awareness. I'm very pro manic episode awareness, and showing people these little day-to-day interactions that you think, oh, well, that was just crazy. Why would he do that? Why would he say that? Maybe because he deals with mental illness that actually makes you say crazy things from time to time. And I know this from my own personal. If I didn't deal with it in my own personal life, I don't know that I would be conscious to it. I don't know that I would be sensitive to it. I don't know that I would even care. But since it's affected me, I've had to wake up to it. And a lot of people don't care about something until it's in their face and it's their problem. And they have to deal with it. As humans, we're kind of selfish in that way. But I'm not going to be selfish. This page is for everybody. This is a safe space for everybody. Men, women, anybody. Anybody that wants to get on here and hear me talk about some mental health, this is for you. So let's get into it. Now, if you were to guess what percentage of men, or how many out of 10 men, if you were to get 10 men, how many out of those men do you believe would have depression? I'll give you a second. Okay, so 1 in 10 men experience depression or anxiety. So that's 10 in 100. It's about 10%. 10% of men. It's not a huge percentage, but if you think about how many men there are, that's a lot of men that struggle with one or the two. One or the other, I apologize. And only about half of that number ever receive treatment. So 1 in 10, only 5 of those 10 people are, if you got 100 men and 10 of them had depression, only 5 of those 10 men would go seek treatment. Why? Because men aren't allowed to talk about their feelings. I mean, if you think about it, we are real quick to call a man sassy if he, tells us how he feels about something. We're real quick to pass judgment when men are in a highly emotional state. I hear women and men say it all the time. You're acting like a bitch. Why? You know what I mean? Like, if it's because I'm expressing my feelings, why is that a female trait only? Why in our society is why in our society are those conversations not happening more? Why is it so difficult to be able to go seek treatment and not feel like you're weak or like there's something wrong with you? There isn't anything wrong with you, but for some reason, we have this stigma. We're breaking a stigma around mental health, and I believe that it's slowly getting better with everybody, men, women, everybody, but there's still a bit of an issue with it. There's a bit of I can't be too emotional because I'm a man and I have this specific role I gotta fill, and it's like, I understand no one wants to get too emotional. Nobody wants, you know what I mean, to do too much, in general. But what is too much? Where's the line? It bothers me because we got to be able to start to impact some change to make it not like that. I want more space, safe spaces, and more open forums where everybody can speak on an issue and everybody can feel heard. So there's a negative stigma that can be felt by men relating to having a mental health condition. Men are expected to just suck it up when they have issues or feel any type of elated emotions, and it's not right. So in an article in Men's Health, psychiatrist Dan, I'm gonna call him Dan I, MD, a psychiatrist at NYU Langone Health, he says we've all been trained to believe that we have to be strong and that depression is not part of our experience. If we had been tough, this is not something we would experience. That's just not true. Yeah, it's true that that's what's pushed, but that's just not true. It's not about, oh, I am weak or I'm not tough if I experience this. Frankly, I would argue that a person that decides to take their mental health in their hands and change it for the better and do the work to become a better them, that's quite the opposite of weak. That's extremely admirable. It's extremely, that's attractive. Having emotional intelligence, that's very attractive. And it's not something that is talked about enough. We all want to get a bag. Oh, do you have money? Are you cute? If you're these two things, can you provide for me? Oh, okay, then let's do it. But it's not about are you emotionally intelligent enough for us to have a conversation? Can we talk without arguing? Can we express our feelings without feeling vulnerable? Yeah, of course you're vulnerable when you express yourself to a certain extent, but without feeling like we're putting ourselves on the line. As I hope you all know that dealing with depression, As I hope you all know, dealing with mental health afflictions is not a sign of weakness. Rather, one could argue that knowing what's going on mentally and doing the work to fix it is quite the opposite of weak. The article goes on to say, the fact that someone experiences depression has nothing to do with their psychological strength. Men and women process depression differently. So there's also that piece of it. Us women, we are expected to get all up in our feelings, get hysterical, and go off of emotion. That's why they say that men are more effective leaders, because they go off of logic and females go off of emotion. Now, I believe that when anybody gets their emotions in check and regulated, they can go off of emotion when needed and go off of logic when needed. Because at the end of the day, every decision takes a little bit of both. But when you have too much emotion in it, it distracts from the actual issue at hand. But at the end of the day, how you process what you're going through, whether it be, getting angry or crying and getting sad, like whichever way it comes out, it's coming out. And nobody wants it to come out, right? No one wants to cry. No one wants to have an angry outburst. No one wants to do certain things in front of certain people. No one wants their emotions to bubble up. But in order to avoid them bubbling up, you have to talk about them. You have to let it out. You have to have an outlet. There has to be some way for you to get it out. It doesn't have to be negative. There are there are very positive ways out there to process. But you have to actually process in order to find those healthy ways. Because you can't do something you're not trying to do. And if you just run away from it, you're not going to get to the point where you fix it. So let's get back into it. So because of the fact that men and women process these things differently, it makes it a little difficult for people to understand where that emotional state's coming from. They're more at risk for substance abuse and suicide or suicide attempts. So a lot of people have unhealthy coping mechanisms and ways to express themselves. I believe that since at a young age, women are taught that we can express our emotions and we can, deal with them and things like that, we find more effective ways to deal with them. But I believe that, I know I at least have faltered in my life and relied on something external, something outside of myself to offer me that emotional support that I needed in a moment. Men are a little bit more likely to go to that probably than talking about it, which with everything we've already gotten into so far, you could see why. I'm going to express myself so I can be made to feel weaker than I already feel. No, I'm good. I would rather just drink. I would rather just have a good time, and you know what I mean? But the issue is when you drink your problems away, or you do anything to get your problems away besides processing them and dealing with them in a healthy way, they stay. They might even get worse. It's especially if you're going down a path of you're drinking a lot, you're spending a lot of money, you're doing a lot of things. I'm not going to get into it, but let me tell you, I understand more than you might realize. It gets to that. It gets like that sometimes. The problems get to piling up even worse when you don't deal with them. And if you use substances to deal with them, it's a lot that can come along with that. So, since the article is getting us here, we're going to touch on it. And I'm going to touch on it all month. And y'all going to get tired of seeing it from me. But I am very passionate about it. It's affected my life personally very deeply. So I personally feel as though it's my duty to touch on this issue. And it's going to be a trigger warning because I did already, use the S word. And I'm gonna call it unaliving from this point forward to keep it on some less, how do I say? I'm gonna keep it on a less triggering note because I already know how YouTube is. And I want to be able to get my point across effectively, and I want it to reach as many people as possible. So basically, I would like to take a little bit of time to point out that this month that we're in right now, September, is Unaliving Prevention Awareness Month. So, if you or anybody you know has or does deal with not wanting to be here, I urge you to use the resources that are at your disposal. There is a number, 988, that you can put in your phone. If you don't want to be here, if you know someone that doesn't want to be here, it will get you connected with resources, and you can talk to somebody to help you get through crisis. You can go somewhere to help you get through crisis. You can do outpatient programs to help you get through crisis. There are a lot of different things that you can do. But in my experience, a lot of it comes from mental health and mental conditions that are not properly being dealt with that lead you to get to that point. I dealt with it at a very young age, so it's extremely important to me to get this message to the teens, the adults, to anybody that doesn't feel like they're heard, doesn't feel like they can talk about how they feel. Because I'll be honest, when you try to talk to somebody about something like that, it is a very uncomfortable situation. It's uncomfortable for them, it's uncomfortable for you, and it makes you feel even more alienated and even more, alone in those moments than, than going through that in itself does. And people not being aware that there are people out there that feel that way, you don't have to understand why people feel that way. I've met many people in my lifetime that have just told me, I just don't get it. And I envy them. I wish that I did not get it, but I do. And when I tell you, it is so important to find the underlying cause and find a purpose and get through that, because it is a permanent solution to a temporary issue. I know that when you're young and even when you get older, there are times where it just feels like it's not going to get better. It feels like, what's the point? I've already lost everybody. I'm down on my rock bottom. I'm down on my last. And now I'm ready. No. Honestly, there are so many different avenues that you can go down that are comfortable for you to get through this. But if nobody's told you today, you do deserve to be here. You are a wonderful person. You're so much more to the people around you. Even if you feel like you have nobody, you're so much more to the people around you than you realize. And don't ever forget that. That said, 988, if you're having issues, you can call an emergency room. If you are absolutely out of options, just please use the resources that are available to you and understand that it does get better. And I'm saying that from getting out of it multiple times. It does get better. You just have to get through the hard part, and you're going to feel 10 times stronger after you get past that point. I promise you, you will feel so much stronger after you get out of there. All right, now let's get back into the article. So, when you cannot express yourself and the world makes you feel weak for feeling the way that you do, you begin to feel like you're out of options. And this is where men unaliving rates are so much higher. You feel helpless. When you feel helpless, what do? You don't like it's very hard to get someone to understand that they don't, but if you do, then you get it. More than 4 times more men than women are no longer here by unaliving every year, according to Mental Health America. So, from what I've always read, men go through with it more than women do. Women may attempt multiple times. Usually something happens where it doesn't get, it's not that fatal. It's not something that'll take them out of this world, or somebody gets to them in time. Maybe they reach out for help before it's too late, but men will carry it out. And with everything that's being put on them, we got to pay more attention to the men in our lives and how they feel, and not invalidate how they feel, any of it. If you don't understand it and you don't know how to be there for it, that's okay, and you can say that, but at least don't invalidate. That's all I could ever ask. So it's crucial for men to recognize symptoms of depression and get help. Get the help that they need, says Armstrong. So we all have mental health, just like we all have physical health. Men shouldn't ignore their mental health or be scared to seek support for it. You go to the doctor, you go to the gym, you take care impeccably of your physical. Your mental is just as important, and the things that happen to your brain, they carry out in your body. When you're stressed and you're going through it, you don't look good. Your face gets to breaking out. You start to get fat or too skinny. You start to just, things get to not doing what they are supposed to do. You get that natural glow. You get that, okay, I'm seeing somebody glow up when you're happy, when you're genuinely happy. And you gotta be willing to be unhappy and go through that and feel those emotions and process them in order to be really happy. And then I like this saying. It's important to encourage ourselves and all the men in our lives to talk about mental health. It's not weak to speak. I like that saying. It's not weak to speak. I think I'm gonna put that in the bio. It's not weak to speak. Speak up. Talk about it. Talk about it with somebody you can trust. You can't talk to everybody about it, but find somebody you can trust and talk to them. I don't know if that's your homeboys, your girl, your mom, your dad. I don't know who it is, but you gotta have at least somebody or some way to let it out that's healthy. So I'm gonna give y'all some common symptoms of depression for men, because for women they're a little different. They're similar, but they're not the same. And this is where things start to get misconstrued. Let's get into it. So you got irritability and anger, impulsiveness, restlessness, sadness or hopelessness, not getting pleasure from activities they once enjoyed, relationship problems, lack of sex desire, fatigue, difficulty sleeping, becoming withdrawn from others, physical symptoms like headaches, pain, digestive problems, escapism, spending extra time at work, risky behavior, such as behaving recklessly, excessive alcohol or drug use, difficulty remembering or making decisions, changes in appetite, lack of energy, and unaliving thoughts or attempts. So, some of those sound like what people like to call an attitude, don't they? That's that, really? That's that attitude. You know what I mean? Like, and it goes both ways. We as humans love to invalidate each other's experience. People be going through something. You had an attitude. You got an attitude. Stop. I really wish people would stop using that verbiage. An attitude, it's like I'm choosing to come up and be just like shitty towards you. There are times where people have a sore. Well, I don't even think that that's a choice. You're emotionally elated, and it's showing, and you're wearing your heart on your sleeve in a moment. But people love to say, "Oh, you got an attitude today." It ain't ever, "Hey, are you good? What's going on? You seem a little down. You seem a little hostile. You seem a little upset. Are you good?" It's just, you got an attitude. And I'm going to be honest, meeting somebody's upset mood or their elated mood, or what you call an attitude, with an attitude does not get anybody anywhere. It doesn't matter which person is saying it to the other. And I know I'm guilty of it. I've been there before. It's taken me, to get to a certain point to be there, but I've been there before. "Oh, you got an attitude today, huh?" And it might be a joke. It might even be a joke. But when does a conversation that starts with that ever end in anything good? You know what I mean? Like, when is it ever, "Yeah, I do. What's up?" Like, you're not going to get anything positive out of it. Instead, try saying things like, "Hey, how you doing today? You seem a little down." "Oh, okay. If you don't want to talk about it, I understand." Because that's another thing. When somebody's upset, and then you kind of ask them, like, "What's up?" and they don't want to talk about it. Sometimes if you just say, "That's okay. I understand. If you change your mind, I'm right here." Sometimes that's enough for them to open up. But I think people are so used to the, "Oh, you got an attitude," that they don't even, after you ask me once and I don't tell you, you probably about to hit me with the "you got an attitude." Or it's about to be, you know what I mean? Like, people start to get used to the way other people deal with them so much that they're just like, fuck it. And it's like, no. Stop. Let's take a minute. Let's have a conversation. What's going on? Because when you really allow somebody to break it down, a lot of times that attitude you perceived just goes away. It melts. And this person now feels like they can trust you. They feel like, I can be vulnerable. I can come into a situation hot, off the presses, and they gonna make sure that I'm good. That's how you build real relationships with people. So, there's that. So yeah, as you can tell, from the range of symptoms on this list, it might not be easy to tell when a man is depressed, and you might not ever get to that point. But when you notice signs or complete changes in people's behavior, like if you know somebody to like be in bed by 9 and do this and do this and do this, and then they just get to switching it up and switching it up and switching it up, like, it ain't even like come at them crazy about it. Just like, "Hey, you good? Like, what's going on? I noticed that you've been boop, boop, boop. Maybe you've been working a lot, or I've noticed that you haven't been sleeping very much." I know a lot of guys that don't sleep a lot at all. Like, they get 4 hours. A lot of guys only get like up to 6 hours a night. And I ain't even trying to plug, but we gonna have a whole conversation about sleep and sleep schedules and what they do to you. Because one thing about depression, it's a very cyclical thing. When you're depressed, you might not sleep. When you don't sleep, you get depressed. When you're depressed, you don't sleep. And boom, we're in a circle. Can't sleep because I'm depressed. And then I'm depressed because I can't sleep. Like, and if you already have those things going on, it's just going to make it worse. Sleep is very important. 6 to 8 hours a night. So what do men and women have in common when it comes to depression? The common denominator for both men and women is that when depressed, people have a lower tolerance for additional stress. It's as if your glass, your ability to tolerate stress is already full. And any additional droplet would make the glass spill over. Honestly, when people are kind of like hot, bothered, stuff like that, you gotta tread lightly. The worst thing that you can do when somebody is already going through it is put them through more. I cannot tell you how many times I've been just like straight up like, yo, I'm going through it today. Like, and then it's like you told that person and they're like, oh, bet I'm about to top that. And they just don't stop fucking with you. If you're dealing with somebody like that, a woman, a man, it don't matter. If you're dealing with somebody like that, they see you down and they keep kicking, they just stress you out. They don't understand, like, all right, I need to put on the kid gloves. And it's not even kid gloves. Like, I'm not over here about to, like, downgrade the situation. I gotta treat this person very carefully because they need to be cared for in this moment. Y'all get to arguing and taking things personal when people are already upset, and it's like, okay, I get it. Your feelings matter too, but like sometimes you just have to you really just have to put your feelings to the side and say, look, we gonna address this later. Make that mental note in your head, like write it in your freaking notes if you got to. We gonna address this later because they coming at me crazy. But sometimes you gotta like grin and bear it and be like, you know what? I hear you. And just let them get to that point. And a lot of times once people get it out, if they did or said something that was cross, they'll realize it and they will apologize for it. But when you just like ready to like pounce on somebody, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. But it takes a lot of growing and learning to get to a point where you can like help somebody through a bad mental state and really be there for them the way that they need you to be there for them. It's not easy. So men are more at risk for unaliving, and Armstrong says experts aren't exactly sure why. It could be that depression often goes unreported by men and then untreated, so they may be less likely to reach out for help when they're having suicidal thoughts. Yeah, I gotta agree. I think it's all that. It's a stigma. It's the fact that they can't talk about it. It's the fact that there's a lot of back and forth that sometimes comes along with being in an emotional state. Like, it's a lot. I would say the lack of resignation men have with their feelings. It's more common to find a woman that can express their feelings effectively than a man. Now, I don't necessarily agree with my own statement. I believe that y'all can very, very well express yourselves. I just think that y'all are not taught to like let it out and talk about it. That's all I meant by that statement. It is not meant to like come across, because when I read it, I'm like, that kind of comes across as not so. I don't care for the way I put that. I would say y'all are not allowed to express yourselves the way we are. We're allowed to like, you know what I mean, be emotional. I wouldn't say like we could just like crash out. I don't think anyone's really like socially accepted to crash out. But if anyone were to be accepted socially to crash out, it would probably be a woman before a man. People always give the excuse of, well, she was going through it and she had this and she had that but it's like, but y'all think when men crash out that they don't also have stuff going on? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm not, you got to find a way to express your emotions effectively without crashing out. But if we're going to give somebody grace, why don't we give everybody grace? Why don't we give each other all grace? Because we all deserve it. Like, we're all just human beings doing this thing called life, trying to figure it out. So because of gender roles, women are allowed to be more emotional, allowing us to process our emotions and understand them. Men, on the other hand, as I mentioned before, they're expected to suck it up, keep it pushing, and makes it difficult to process and understand your emotions. The article says men are diagnosed with depression at half the rate of women, according to AMA Journal of Ethics. There could be several reasons why. One is that men and women get socialized into different gender definition roles, and men may be more likely to discuss physical symptoms like fatigue or pain, so the condition might go misdiagnosed. I mean, if you just tell me you got pain and you tired, it could be a plethora of things. I ain't gonna think you got depression. If you're not telling me about the emotional effects of it, I can't accurately diagnose you. Men might also internalize and discount their mental pain or symptoms like sadness or irritability, says Armstrong. Yeah, I think that y'all are put in a position to discount your own mental health, and it bothers me that happens. Nobody should ever discount the way that they feel for anyone or any reason. Men still face social stigma that expressing their emotions is a sign of weakness, so they may be less likely to seek treatment for depression. So how do you know when to get help, and how do you do it once you know you need it? It's crucial not to ignore these feelings and seek help, especially when symptoms linger longer than a month or so. Also, seek help when depression symptoms are interfering with your daily life. If you don't want to get up out of bed, if every time you go home from work, all you want to do is go in the bed and not do shit, and you know what I mean? Like, if your day-to-day is being affected by anything for any amount of time, it's time to take a look at it. It's time to see what's going on. Something to look at when people are depressed is changes in their behavior or the presence of entirely new behavior. So that's what I was talking about earlier about, like, if somebody regularly is on this schedule, I'm not saying like a small deviation in the schedule is not okay. I'm saying if somebody is just switching it up, like just doing stuff that's just not them, it's probably time to say, hey, bro, are you good? You doing all right? I just wanted to make sure, because you matter to me. You mean a lot to me. So this might include unrelenting down mood, feeling of worthlessness, irritability, and thoughts of unaliving. Also, pay attention to changes in diet, sleep, and energy levels, and whether you're still interested in activities that bring you joy. If one of your boys is a hooper and he just gets to not wanting to hoop anymore, and he's just like straight, make sure your boy is good, bro. Like, I understand they just funny acting because they got a girl or whatever. But, like, I'm talking about on some whole other level, like, make sure you check on your people. Because men are not as likely to reach out about it. So check on your people when you notice things are off. It takes a village. It takes a good support system in order to get to a point where you feel comfortable expressing your emotions and dealing with them. So it's important, if you are on the sidelines, you're not in the position to be a good supporter. If you're not in crisis but you realize something's got to give, reach out to a licensed therapist and see if there's a treatment plan that you can begin. Never hesitate to call 988. So the article says seeking out a therapist is an essential first step to treating depression. They'll discuss your symptoms and why you get why you might be experiencing them, such as if they're connected to a traumatic event or another mental health disorder, such as bipolar disorder. That's just one example. There's so many others. There's nothing wrong with going to a therapist. I'm always going to preach to go to therapy on this page. You ain't ever going to hear me preach anything different. If that's what you want to do, if it's something you're scared of, if it's something you don't think you can afford, if you have insurance, like benefits through your job, you can probably afford it. It's usually like $20 to $30 a copay. You don't got to go every week. You go every 2 weeks. You could go however much you're willing to spend, $30. You could go, you know what I mean? Like, there are so many ways. Like, please, if you are having issues, you don't have someone you want to talk to, or even if you do have someone you want to talk to, or if you're not having issues and you just want somebody that's unbiased to be able to look at the way that you live your life and help you navigate it, therapy is always an option. And I hated it when I first started doing it because I was forced to do it. But now choosing to do it, I don't want to not have these sessions to take an hour to really think about everything that I processed in the last 2 weeks that I might not have taken the time to sit down and say, hey, let me tap in. Because there's been some things that I noticed that happened that I just kind of slid right past. Therapists will also discuss coping strategies, relationships, life stressors, life goals. You can figure out a lot in therapy. Sometimes you realize that you need to fix yourself for your partner. Sometimes you realize that you need to fix. Sometimes you realize you got to change for your partner. And sometimes you realize you got to change your partner. Sometimes you realize that you're doing everything all wrong with everybody. And you got to change all of it. Sometimes you realize you're doing everything right. You don't know until you go. And what's right and what's wrong. We make our own definitions of it. But they can definitely help you get to that point. They will recommend the best treatment, which may include psychotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and it may include medications. It just depends. And a lot of people are not comfortable with taking medications. They're worried that if they go to therapy, like, oh my God, you're going to give me a medication. You're going to just diagnose me with something and I'm going to be, messed up for the rest of my life and blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. All right, let me tell you this. Whatever you got going on mentally is what you got going on mentally, whether you go get help for it or not. The only way for it to get better is if you go do something about it. Period. I know a lot of people that don't want to go to the doctor to get checked for something because they're afraid that they'll have it and they don't want to deal with that. So they would rather deal with whatever that thing is. And I'm talking about anything. And live in the world of unknown than to go to the doctor, find out, and maybe get treated for it and fix it. Stop doing that to yourself. Stop doing it to yourself. Stop doing it to the people around you. It's not right. If you don't know what's going on, if there's something that's just, unrelenting, go do what you gotta do. Go take care of yourself and your stuff. You can't be there for other people if you're not 100%. You got to. The bottom line is it's vital to get help when you're dealing with depression. Don't ignore it. It's a condition like any other medical condition. Nobody likes being sick or wants to be sick. But once you're sick, you have to recognize that this is going on and do something about it. It's just as simple as that. They said exactly what I just said. And I ain't even read that little blurb before I just said all that. But we're telling you it is what it is. Tap in. Put yourself First, you're not alone. Despite the stigma, you are not alone. You are not weak. You are one of the few that is actually willing to take the time to recognize a problem and do something to fix it. The first step to fixing a problem is recognizing that you have one. Now, thank y'all so much for tuning back into Tab Space. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much. I would like you to like, comment, subscribe, and tell me what you thought about this video. Tell me what you think about this type of content. And I will see y'all in my next video. Bye.